I've appreciated your father for a long time. He was one of the first black men to talk about things like depression.
When you're a preacher's kid, people are like, what is your church talent? I didn't have any of those. I ended up pregnant at 13. I shared in their grief for the pain that they were in immediately. Let me cross my leg again so I can look professional, but your girl is a trap star.
Well, I'm gonna see what you can do. Hey family, welcome to season 3 of the Carlos Watson Show. Now today we're wrapping up what has been an absolutely fantastic premiere week. We featured everyone from Billy Crystal, he was incredibly funny, Sean Penn, Leah Remini, will.i.am, and guess what? When we wrap up this week, we're doing it in style. Now coming up, we're gonna introduce you to a brand new segment on the show. It's called From A to Gen Z, featuring iHeart podcast host Sammy J, who will be introducing us to the new and the next. And I'm talking about the most interesting Gen Z folks. You're gonna love it. More on this in a bit. But first, Sarah Jakes Roberts is a best-selling author. She's a businesswoman, a pastor, a media personality. She's got a wonderful new book. It's called Woman Evolve, and we talk about it. We talk about her faith, her family, her amazing love story, and so much more. You've got to take a look.
The Carlos Watson Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance.
Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And are you in Los Angeles or Denver, or where do you spend time? Where do you live right now?
I'm in Los Angeles, so my office is in Woodland Hills, and my husband and I have a home in Calabasas.
How long have you been in Los Angeles? Have you been there a long time, or is that a new home for you?
Almost 7 years, so I feel like I'm getting my LA feet more than wet now.
And where are you in the lineup? Because I'm one of 4 kids, and I think you're one of 5. Are you the baby girl? Are you the oldest? Where are you?
I am the baby girl. I have a baby brother right underneath me, but we don't really count him. So I'm the baby of the family, essentially. That's what I tell myself.
I hope he's not listening. I love that.
He's fine.
The problem with most of us is that we think too low.
We have to be willing to challenge ourselves into wholeness.
Get ready to do some digging, because we're going to find out why you went through what you went through.
Congratulations on your book. I love how many books you've written, and I love the thoughtfulness, and I just love the way you share. How do you write your books?
Writing is my first love. Writing is the reason why, I've even have a platform right now.
You can have the power can be magnified, but power needs an environment that is conducive to what it's been called to do.
Speaking is something that I have to work on, and I stretch myself in order to do it, but writing is home for me. I love words. I love the way they come together and how they can reach people's heart.
Am I looking at an introvert or an extrovert? Because you're pretty good on the stage.
I'm an introvert.
So how do you psych yourself up to go on stage? Because you seem very comfortable up there in front of a large crowd.
Some of you are going to have to go back to your homes and reintroduce yourself. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is the anointed and appointed vessel of God. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I've been changed and transformed and set free. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm not the woman you used to know.
I have to believe in what I'm saying. That's like number one. So when I feel like I have something to say, it gives me the courage to override what I feel.
It takes courage to be different. It takes courage to go where you've never gone before. Do you have the courage?
I've appreciated your father for a long time. He was one of the first black men to talk about things like depression and to talk about it in a way that I think was valuable to lots of other people, even beyond himself.
We have no peace. We have no off switch. So all of a sudden, it's not only that you're bombarded with pressure, it's that you can't get away from it.
I am old enough to remember when no one knew who my dad was, and then also old enough to have seen him transition into someone who was on the cover of Time magazine and doing national media as just a part of his everyday routine.
What are you wanting them to get?
I want them to understand that you are the architect of tomorrow.
And I think the difference in those experiences is really what has shaped a lot of who I am. And I think that what it taught me more than anything is just how a life of service can really change the world, but also the pressure to make sure that we as children made that sacrifice easy for my dad while going through our own issues and struggles.
To watch you as your family, to see you face challenges at home that will never be displayed on the screen, has taught us tremendous things about what we're capable of and this stock in which we come from.
It feels like being torn between two different identities, who you know you should be, but who you struggle to become.
When did it get tough for you to deal with that duality?
You know, when we moved to Dallas, that's the time when I really began to feel like, well, where do I fit in this? When you're a preacher's kid, people are like, do you play the piano? Do you play the drums? Like, what is your church talent? And I didn't have any of those. And I think in an effort for me to find something that felt exclusively mine, that I found myself in a crowd full of other people who were trying to figure it out. And whenever people who are uncertain get together, they make questionable decisions. And that's why I ended up pregnant at 13. And that is the moment where I realized that those two dualities, if I had to choose a side, I would rather shun everything altogether and just figure out what you can do after you've had a child at 14 years old and you're trying to pick up the pieces of your life and not focus on ministry. You're trying to fit into the church at all.
Tell me a little bit about that moment when you found out you were pregnant, and then tell me about how you shared it with your mother and your father.
I will just tell you how young my mind was at that time, that I was most concerned about getting in trouble for getting pregnant. I wasn't even thinking about the impact of you're going to be responsible for someone and this is going to change the rest of your life. I just didn't want to get in trouble. And my sister wrote a letter, left it anonymous, but put it in our mailbox. And it basically said, your daughter's pregnant. And that is how my parents found out.
Bishop, take us through that moment when she said, be nice. What did that feel like?
Shocked, crushed, emotionally devastated.
And when you told them, were you relieved? Were you scared?
When you're pregnant, there is a grief of the dreams that they had for their child that is immediately present in their eyes. And so I shared in their grief, and then shame for the pain that they were in immediately hit me. And I think that's the first time that I can really identify feeling depression, because I didn't fully understand what would happen to me, but I knew that it was going to be hard and it was going to be dark. And I can remember my dad told me, he said, you can overcome this, but you're going to have to hit the ground running.
Where did you go from there? Because I read that you ended up top 10% in your high school. You went on to college, married an NFL player. So did you somehow manage to get things on a track that felt healthy, or where did you go from there?
I hit the ground running. So I graduated high school early. I immediately enrolled into college, but because I never dealt with the emotions and the shame and the depression, all of that came crashing down. I started waitressing at a strip club.
First strip club I go to apply for a job, I walk in and see a deacon from the church. See?
That person that I was with ended up getting drafted in the NFL, but still the relationship very toxic. And so it wasn't until I stopped trying to be someone who overcame teen pregnancy and chose to be someone who got pregnant as a teenager that I really saw my life begin to shift.
And was that a moment? Was that a series of moments? Was that a conversation? What was the moment that you evolved, to use the word of your book and of your ministry?
It was a series of moments, but there was one moment in particular. In that toxic marriage that I was in, we had this incident and a woman was brought to the home, and I'm barely trying to hold this little image of a girl who overcame together, and I lost it. And I was like ramming my car into her car. The police were called on me, and I'm sitting at this CPS office where they're asking me about like the care of my children. And it was walking out of that CPS office where I really had to ask myself, like, how long are you going to keep trying to hold this together? Will you dare to just let it fall apart? When I gave myself permission to just be where I was, broken, hurt, that's when I really started to heal.
It wasn't about being embarrassed. It wasn't about protecting my image. I cared nothing about that. I cared about what you see sitting right here.
My family has been incredibly supportive. They believed in me in a way that I didn't believe in myself. Because it doesn't matter how much faith is around you. If the faith doesn't get in you, then it doesn't help to move your life forward.
We find ourselves in the presence of the Lord saying, bless the Lord in spite of feeling so weak. I'm going to bless you anyway.
I just came to this point where I said, something's got to change. And I feel like for people to even come to that point takes courage, because it takes us being transparent enough to say to ourselves, I'm not content with how my life is functioning right now. And then my mom has this women's program as a part of our ministry in Dallas. And so I stepped in and I helped her, and I was just doing things behind the scenes. But part of it was seeing other women pick up the pieces of their life and take on wisdom and glean from other women to become better. And there was something about being a facilitator for their evolution that made me wonder what would happen if I stopped cheering everyone else on and dared to dig within my own soul. And that is what motivated me to kind of say, okay, this is what I've got. Now, God, what can you do with this?
I could use anything to save you. A strip club, a drug, a teen pregnancy.
I so love that by doing service, you might transform yourself.
It comes back to service. Everyone wants to find their purpose, and it feels like this big nebulous idea that I have to find and occupy so quickly. But one of the things that I have learned that is most helpful to others, and certainly helpful in our relationship with God, is using our life to be purposeful no matter where we are right now. You don't have to know whether or not you're going to write books or whether you're supposed to start a business. You can find purpose today if you show up in the world as a servant. And I think if we could all stop thinking about ourselves, as hard as that is, because our worlds are big and heavy and crazy, but to take a moment to step out of our own experience and say, well, what can I do to help someone else, that we would all have richer, more meaningful lives, and we would see that heaven does still touch earth because we're still here.
Saying that and thinking about that made me ask, am I asking enough people in my life, how are you doing? Because as you said, you can get very involved in your own space.
Prime example, my daughter during the pandemic told me that it was hard for her too. And I'm thinking, like, you're not taking Zoom meetings, like you're at home, you're eating all of the snacks. Like, sis, what is hard about you being in a pandemic? But then I thought about what it looks like from a 10-year-old's perspective to not be able to hang out with your friends, to wonder if the world is coming to an end. It changed overnight for her too. And I think that sometimes our greatest blinder is our own experiences, because we don't see what the world looks like for other people.
Be fearless! We can do it! I believe in you! We can do it faster!
Our home is the training ground for her dreams policy. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly.
Sarah, I'm a romantic, and so I'm always asking people on this show, what's the best thing you've learned about love in this life?
My husband is my favorite love story that I've ever experienced.
If we are going to see ourselves as sacred, I think it first starts in the environment that cultivates us. And so I think a woman wants a healthy, sacred environment.
That's powerful, and I will continue to do my part.
My husband came into my life and became evidence to me that it can stay and grow and be so fun through every minute. So I think the greatest lesson that I have learned about love is that it's real.
That's going to end up going down as one of the greatest quotes of all time on this show. My husband is my best love story of all time.
One of the things that I try to tell people over and over again is that the way I feel about my husband is how I learned to feel about myself. That after spending so many years tormented by shame and regret and wondering if I was worthy and wondering if I had what it took, that I came to a place where seeing myself made me smile. So start living out the vision you have for yourself, fall in love with who you are, and be so surprised that someone shows up that you wonder whether or not you want to give up this life that you love to build a life with someone else.
Tell me why you decided to write this book in particular. I know you've written before, but was there something that led you to write this particular book? Is there a backstory to your writing this book?
You know, I used to say things like, when I get to heaven, I'm going to argue with Eve about how she failed us in the garden. And one day I was speaking and I got a little convicted about that, because I'm like out here empowering women, but I also got a woman on my hit list, you know, and God was like, you can't be petty in heaven, so you got to figure that out. So I just saw Eve as this woman who knew better but didn't do better. But I also saw that God still had a promise for her. And when I got this revelation about Eve, I wanted every woman to know it in any form, in any capacity, that the revolution is closer than you think it is. And if you're willing to do the work, God can and you can revolutionize your life to something that you could not even imagine. And I am a living witness of that from 13 to where I am now. This was the revolution that God had in mind that I had to be willing to uproot my own issues to discover.
I want you to read me something, but I want you to read me something knowing that there are people who are going to simultaneously be inspired by what you're saying and inside a little bit afraid.
You're a beautiful combination of sweet and sour. You're spicy and savory. You're Mary and Eve. You're completely understood and an enigma waiting to be revealed. You're limitless in your potential and the most divine creation. I wrote this book because you are the woman I once was and the woman I have yet to become.
Sarah, tell me what you've learned about dreaming fearlessly.
You know, what I have learned about dreaming fearlessly, I think really happened with this Woman Evolve revelation that I received. Because something happens when you begin telling your story. People start taking notice, but then they also start trying to make you fit into this box. And, you know, they're like, you should stay in this circle. You should stay in this speaking arena. You should write this type of book. And I wanted to wait until I had something that I knew came from God. When I got this revelation, God gave me a vision that I felt like was worthy of laying my life down for, sacrificing my time and my family for, because everything has sacrifice connected to it. And so when we talk about dreaming fearlessly, for me, it's connecting where I am and what my dream is to the generations. If you're just dreaming about how you want your life to look, I think your dream is too small. One of the things that I challenge people to do, even in the book, is to take that dream that you have for your present, but connect it to how it will affect the generations. When Martin Luther King Jr. gave his incredible speech, he said, point blank period, this is not just about me. I have a dream for my children. And I don't think we have a dream that is worth losing the anxiety, losing the depression, losing the shame for, unless it's going to affect the generations. And so a dream that's bigger than you is the only dream worthy of resisting fear and doing it anyway for.
Can I finish with what I call rapid fire and ask you 3 or 4 quick questions?
Sure.
Brandy versus Monica.
Brandy.
Your favorite movie of all time?
Notting Hill.
Look at you, romantic. Okay, when this world gets healthy again and you and your husband can travel properly, where would you love to go?
Italy. Take me all over Italy, and I just want to sleep and eat and just experience the world.
The thing that would surprise people, even people who've been listening to you, following your ministry, what would surprise them to learn about you?
I am a trap star rapper. Let me tell you something. Okay, hold on. I have to keep it professional because I'm on the Carlos Watson show. But I am a trap star down on the inside. She's so hood. You just can't even see it. Let me cross my leg again so I can look professional, but your girl is a trap star.
You know what? I'm going to have you at OZY Fest. I'm going to invite you to our OZY Fest Music and Ideas Festival. I'm going to see what you can do.
Let's do it. I got the hand movements and everything.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I had a good time.
Eli, let's go to you first. What'd you think of your girl, Sarah Jakes Roberts?
Wow, what a story. Pregnant at 14, and then ramming the car into the other lady's car. Like, it's so courageous to talk about those things. I loved everything about it.
Liz Fox.
When she was talking about blaming Eve, then coming full circle about that realization of what being a woman is and how in really conservative Christian groups it is seen as a negative thing, and how she's become this feminist, strong woman that is so valuable to so many women.
Monica?
Believe it or not, guys, she is my number one. She just was completely open. Her love story about her husband was endearing. And she is really good with words. Like, she said she was, but towards the end of it, I'm like, I thought I was doing worse. Girl got it going on.
Kimmy?
You had told me a few months ago that Sarah Jessica Parker was coming.
Right.
And when I saw this name on the calendar, I'm like, I think he messed up.
Right.
I needed Sarah Jakes Roberts way more than I ever would want SJP. As somebody who has kind of questioned religion, I was a little nervous about somebody who's a preacher, but she has questions and makes it okay to question and not just to accept this absolute story. Yeah. I loved her.
I hope you like Sarah Jakes Roberts as much as the team did, as much as I did. I knew a little bit about her, but I just loved meeting her. I loved her life story. I hope her husband watched. What a wonderful thing for someone to say, my best love story is my husband. All kinds of beautiful. Hope you enjoyed that too.
Hey. Whoa. Hey. Hey. Yeah.
Hey, Sammy J, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Carlos. It's so great to be here.
Well, I'm really excited about this. I love the segment that we're going to do all about Gen Z and some kind of young change makers. But before we get into that, I want to get into you a little bit. What made you get into media? How did that happen?
I kind of fell into it by accident.
Hi, it's Sammy J with Radio Disney and from the set of American Idol, New York Fashion Week 2019. Right now, I am at BeautyCon, New York. I am at the iHeartRadio Music Festival. I am back in New York City, here at the US Open. Now, I love being on a red carpet, but what in the world am I doing at the ESPYs?
I have to introduce you, if you haven't met, to Sammy J.
I missed you. I didn't know it was going to be you. This is so surprise! Surprise!
This amazing young woman named Sammy J. She is the youngest person that has a podcast on iHeartRadio.
At the end of 7th grade, I met someone at iHeart who was like, you know what? I really like your personality. What if we did an interview from a 13-year-old's perspective and you get to interview a musical artist? And me being 13, I'm like, great, let's do that. I didn't really think anything would come from it, but a few weeks later, to my surprise, we got an email saying, hey, there's an up-and-coming artist named Jordan Fisher.
You like to mess with me. Sending all them pictures, you like to mess with me.
He's about to release his first single of an EP. Would you want to do an interview with him for Z100? And I was like, yes. I did a few interviews for iHeart throughout that summer. I covered the New York City Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Sammy J here, and I'm going to be covering the Thanksgiving Day Parade.
And then from there on, I was an employee of Radio Disney for 4 years, covering their East Coast digital and video content. And I did so many things, from backstage at Broadway to Hamilton. And then my sophomore year of high school, my anxiety got really bad because just being a high school girl can be really hard, you know, and I started listening to podcasts as a form of distraction, and I couldn't really relate to anything I was listening to, and I wanted to hear stuff from people that I looked up to and people breaking stigmas and talking about what were actually going on while just having an honest conversation. And I was like, let me try and create that. So I did research on the marketplace. I taught myself a deck. I looked at videos, how to pitch. I pitched a pilot, and we're at the end of our season 2 of the podcast.
Sammy, talk to me a little bit about Gen Z and how you see it as someone who is Gen Z, and what would you love to be true about Gen Z's impact over the next decade?
I think a lot of people from my generation for the longest time didn't take us seriously, and I think until Parkland happened,
since the time that I came out here, it has been 6 minutes and 20 seconds. The shooter has ceased shooting and will soon abandon his rifle, blend in with the students as they escape, and walk free for an hour before arrest. Fight for your lives before it's someone else's job.
That's when the media started to actually put the spotlight on these kids, being like, hey, we've experienced this, not just politicians who have never experienced this to the magnitude. We know what this is like. This happened on social media, and people were like, oh my goodness, they actually have something useful to say to the conversation. I think people don't realize, for people 25 and down, we've experienced a global pandemic, an attempt to overthrow the government, multiple school shootings, social media. We've experienced a lot, and having dealt with that, we have something to say. I think Gen Z has holds so much power because we know how to speak our mind now. We know how to utilize social media, and we know that when we come together in strong numbers, we can show up and make a difference. And I think we showed that in this past election.
I was having a conversation with Phineas, the musician and producer.
Yeah, he was on.
He said, you know, Carlos, your generation is used to asking for permission. Like, can I do this, that? And he said, my generation's just used to just uploading things and just going for it.
I think asking for permission, you have to wait on other people to determine your own success. But then when you are in charge of your own fate, then you can control that narrative.
Sammy, this is gonna be really good. I'm so excited that you're doing this with us. Please keep bringing really interesting people. And I think that there is such magic in introducing and discovering and getting to know people on their way up. So I'm looking forward to some of your choices.
I'm excited to show you some awesome new people.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that segment. I'm really excited about the folks that Sammy J is going to introduce us to. I already got a sneak peek at one. Trust me, she's got good taste. You're going to enjoy this. It's going to be a special segment. Another thing I want to talk to you about, you notice these new kicks? What are you thinking, good people? Look, I've got a new partner. They're called Cariuma, wonderful Brazilian company making the most amazing, cool, sustainable shoes. And guess what they're doing for people who I love? They're giving you a little bit of a discount, a little wink and nod. Don't tell everybody else. But Cariuma.com/Carlos. Go to it. Look as fly as I look. Or at least I hope I look. Don't tell anybody. Okay, enjoy. Much appreciated. Guys, if you're enjoying the show, remember, there's always more here. You can subscribe. You definitely can enjoy the podcast. And spread the word. Don't be selfish. Share it with your friends. I'll see you again.